Today I'm celebrating Mark Golding. Mark Golding was a man who will be very difficult to describe in any kind of concise way, because he was mystery itself. He was a mystic. He was an absolutely fascinating man that many people held very close to their hearts, and I was most disappointed recently contacting him by text, not getting any response, only to then discover that actually he died some years ago without my knowledge. Again, not being on Facebook at the time and participating in social media, it was impossible for me. Well, I just didn't get to hear about it, and more's the pity, because I would have loved to have been there to participate in his farewell. Mark Golding was a striking man with a beautiful beard when I first met him, and I loved getting to know him. He was someone who actually spent, I think it was about 20 odd years of his life as a Buddhist monk based in Brighton, meditating assiduously, studying the Vedantas. Is that the correct term? I believe that's the one. I'm not so conversant in Buddhist scripture. And he had been a very serious student and teacher of Buddhism. In fact, I saw later in his life some of his most valued gifts from people were sacred Buddhist texts that he had long sought after. He also described himself as a treasure hunter, and he had developed the knack over many years of being able to earn money by finding peculiar objects that he could resell. He would go to car boot sales and auctions, and had a canny knack for being able to discover beautiful objects that he could resell. He was also a poet and a profound writer. He was a fantastic artist, and that was actually much later in life that he really got into creating mandala and sacred geometry, and then eventually painting, and created so many beautiful pieces. He used to draw personalized mandala for people, so that he would have a kind of a consultation with them, and then take the symbolism that represented them and an aesthetic quality that he imbued into those mandalas that represented those people, and I'm sure they are very treasured objects to those people to this very day. How I wish I'd asked him for one myself. Mark was also an amazing dancer. It really amazed me once when I got to see him at a party, and he was absolutely slick on the dance floor, listening to really up-to-date contemporary music. Here was a man in his late 60s, absolutely looking amazing on the dance floor. That is, for me, a really beautiful thing to remember. But the story that really blew me away from Mark Golding's life, he found himself at one point about to commit suicide. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, he had a failed attempt. And it was not long after that he discovered, if I remember correctly, his son was in hospital in Australia suffering from water on the lungs. And around that time, Mark had taken to exploring the woods, I believe St Helens Woods in Hastings, and found himself drawn to clearing a swamp. There was loads of water backed up in the woods, and creating this disgusting, sludgy, slimy swamp that he wanted to clear so that the water could flow more freely. And as time went on, he came to see that there was a strong parallel with his son on the other side of the world, and the need to clear the water from his lungs. And so it became somewhat of an obsession for the period of, I believe it was about a year, going to the woods every day to clear these swamps that were drowning large parts of the woods, only to then discover that there was a spring, a concealed spring, after he had cleared vast amounts of land that had been, where he had been up to his neck at times in fetid, stinking mud, managed to clear the woods right the way back to the source of this water, which was a spring which had been blocked. The spring itself was right at the top of Hastings and had actually watered the men of the Crusades and of William the Conqueror on his way to Hastings. And this spring had been built into like an ornate stone mounting had been built around it, and someone had purposely blocked the hole, plugged it. And he had some suspicions how that came to arise and what significance that may have had. But he both cleared the woods, rediscovered the spring, and then basically anointed them into this sacred place that was really, truly special. Getting to go to the spring with Mark and other people was a real honour, and to hear of his story and how finally, upon clearing the spring, his son recovered from this life-threatening condition on the other side of the world. It's very difficult to not see a relationship between the two events. So, you know, as with all good stories, some of the detail might be slightly awry. But that's the essence that I remember of Mark Golding. He was a truly beautiful man and deeply affected so many of the people around him. He was... I went to see him towards the end of his life. He had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing some treatment, but the last time I saw him, I really struggled to believe that he was actually near death. He seemed well, and you know, now I realise that I must have seen him in the last 6 months of his life without realising it. And yeah, I'm quite surprised, because there was a real magic around Mark Golding that left me thinking if anyone was going to defeat that disease, it was going to be him. But more's the pity. Although we all have an ending that comes to us at some point, and he lived a rich and fulfilling life, affecting so many people so beautifully. He leaves beautiful children and grandchildren, and I hope that this is worthy of his name and offends no one, and enables us to share in a moment of cherishing once more this beautiful being, a man with a true genius who was able to really connect with other people and the world and the things that he studied and did, I would say through a lack of fear and an ability to just take ownership of the things that he wanted to do. So here's to Mark Golding.